Before you watch another second of this video, I want you to think about one person. Not someone you hate, not someone you barely remember. I'm talking about the person you couldn't stop thinking about. The one whose messages made your entire day better. The one whose silence ruined your entire night. The one you kept trying to impress, even after they stopped noticing your effort. Now let me ask you something. What if I told you that every time you chase that person, you unknowingly push them further away? It sounds unfair, almost impossible, because everything we've been taught about love tells us that trying harder should produce better results. Call them again. Text them one more time. Explain yourself one more time. Fight for the relationship. Show them how much you care. But what if that advice has been quietly destroying your confidence for years? What if the greatest mistake wasn't that someone walked away, but that you started walking away from yourself just to keep them? Psychologists have spent decades studying attraction, attachment, and human behavior. The ancient Stoics spent centuries studying something even deeper, the human mind. And despite living nearly 2,000 years apart, they reached the same uncomfortable conclusion. People who desperately seek validation almost always become controlled by the very people they're trying to impress. Not because they're weak, not because they're broken, because they unknowingly hand over the keys to their emotional life. The moment your happiness depends on another person's choices, your freedom quietly disappears. By the end of this journey, you'll understand why some people never have to chase anyone, why silence often commands more respect than endless explanations, and why the strongest people in history were never the loudest people in the room. Most importantly, you'll discover why the person you've been searching for all along has been waiting inside you. Imagine standing in front of a mirror, not the kind hanging on a bedroom wall, a different kind of mirror, one that reflects every decision you've made over the last 5 years. Every apology you didn't owe, every message you sent knowing they'd probably ignore it, every moment you accepted less than you deserved because losing them felt more frightening than losing yourself. Now imagine that mirror asking you one simple question. Who are you becoming? Not who you pretend to be, not who people expect you to be. Who are you becoming through the choices you make every single day? It's a difficult question because most people spend their lives measuring success by what they gain. A better job, a bigger house, more money, more followers, more attention. Very few people stop long enough to ask what they're losing in exchange. Maybe they're losing peace. Maybe they're losing confidence. Maybe they're losing their identity one compromise at a time. Marcus Aurelius once ruled the most powerful empire on earth. Millions of lives depended on his decisions. He faced wars, betrayal, political pressure, and unimaginable responsibility. Yet every morning, before dealing with the outside world, he reminded himself of one truth. The greatest battle wasn't happening on distant battlefields. It was happening inside his own mind, because every human being eventually discovers the same reality. Life isn't determined by what happens to you. It's determined by the meaning you give to what happens. Two people can experience the exact same rejection. One spends years believing they weren't enough. The other quietly thanks life for revealing where they were no longer meant to belong. The event is identical. The story is different, and stories create destiny. Modern neuroscience explains something remarkable. Your brain isn't designed to show you reality exactly as it is. It's designed to protect you. Every second, it filters millions of pieces of information, searching for patterns that might keep you safe. Thousands of years ago, this ability protected our ancestors from predators hiding in the wilderness. Today, the predators have changed. They're no longer lions. They're unanswered messages. Cold conversations, someone pulling away, a relationship ending. Your brain reacts as though your survival depends on fixing the situation immediately. That's why your heart races when someone doesn't reply. That's why your stomach tightens before opening a message. That's why one sentence can replay inside your head for weeks. But here's what almost nobody realizes. The pain isn't created by the silence. The pain is created by the story you attach to the silence. They don't love me anymore. I must have done something wrong. I'm not enough. Notice something. None of those thoughts are facts. They're assumptions. and assumptions have destroyed more peace than reality ever has. The Stoics understood this long before psychology existed. They believed that suffering begins the moment we confuse our interpretations with the truth. Think about the last time someone disappointed you. Was the disappointment caused only by what they did? Or was it magnified by the expectations you secretly created in your own mind? Expectations are invisible contracts. The problem is, most people never tell the other person they've signed them. They simply expect them to know, to understand, to behave exactly the way they imagined. When reality fails to match that fantasy, pain arrives, not because reality was cruel, because expectation was unrealistic. Imagine carrying a beautiful glass vase through a crowded street. Every person who walks past could accidentally break it. Would you carry it carelessly? Of course not. Now imagine that vase is your emotional piece. Every time you place it into someone else's hands, you're asking them to protect something only you were meant to carry. Some people will be careful, others won't. Either way, the responsibility was never supposed to belong to them. It belonged to you. And the moment you truly understand that, everything about the way you love, the way you trust, and the way you live begins to change forever. There is an invisible prison that millions of people enter without ever realizing they've stepped inside. It has no walls, no locked doors, no chance, yet it controls the way they think, the way they feel, and eventually the way they live. Its name is attachment, not love, not loyalty, attachment. At first, the difference seems almost impossible to notice. You meet someone, they make you laugh. They understand parts of you that nobody else ever noticed. Being around them feels effortless. For the first time in a long time, you feel seen. Nothing's wrong with that. Connection is one of the most beautiful parts of being human. But slowly, almost invisibly, something begins to change. You stop enjoying their presence, and you begin depending on it. Your happiness starts waiting for their reply. Your confidence rises when they compliment you. Your mood collapses when they become distant. Without realizing it, you've handed someone else the remote control to your emotional life. Every button they press changes how you feel. One kind message makes your entire day. One cold response ruins your week. And the frightening part is, most people call this love. The Stoics never did. They believed real love should make you stronger, not smaller, more peaceful, not more anxious, more complete, not more dependent. Imagine planting a tree beside another tree. Both grow taller together. Their roots remain separate. Each one can survive a storm. Now imagine wrapping two young trees so tightly around each other that neither can stand alone. The moment one falls, the other falls with it. That's not strength. That's dependence disguised as closeness. Life has a strange way of revealing the difference. Everything feels perfect until someone changes. Maybe they become busy. Maybe they grow in another direction. Maybe they simply decide to leave. Suddenly, the person who once made you feel alive becomes the source of your deepest pain. Not because they changed, because your identity quietly became attached to their presence. Marcus Aurelius wrote something that continues to challenge people centuries later. He reminded himself that every person he loved was mortal. Every friendship could end. Every possession could disappear. Not because he expected the worst, because he wanted to appreciate what he had without becoming enslaved by the fear of losing it. Modern psychology describes a similar idea. The more terrified you become of losing something, the more your brain begins acting from fear instead of wisdom. Fear makes people cling. Fear makes people over-explain. Fear makes people ignore red flags. Fear makes people beg for another chance when deep inside they already know the answer. Think back to a time when you desperately wanted someone to stay. Did you become calmer? Or did you become someone you barely recognized? Maybe you checked your phone every few minutes. Maybe you replayed conversations over and over. Maybe you searched for hidden meanings inside every sentence they wrote. Maybe you convinced yourself that if you just found the perfect words, everything would go back to normal. But life rarely works that way. People don't leave because one sentence wasn't perfect. Relationships don't collapse because one message arrived too late. Most endings begin long before anyone notices them. Just like winter doesn't arrive in a single day, neither does emotion. Distance. It begins quietly. A conversation becomes shorter. Laughter becomes less frequent. Effort becomes one-sided. And instead of accepting what reality is showing us, we often begin chasing the version of the person that no longer exists. That's one of the hardest truths anyone can accept. Sometimes you're not fighting for the relationship. You're fighting for the memory of who they used to be. And memories can never love you back. There's an old Japanese story about a fisherman who caught a beautiful bird trapped inside a net. The bird was injured, so he cared for it, fed it, protected it. Day after day, the bird grew stronger. Finally, the day came when it could fly again. The fisherman opened his hands. The bird looked at the open sky, and it looked back at him. For a moment, neither moved. The fisherman smiled and let the bird fly away. Someone watching nearby asked, "Weren't you afraid it would never return?" The fisherman answered, "If I truly loved it, freedom was always part of the gift." That story isn't really about a bird. It's about us. Most people confuse possession with love. They think love means holding on tighter, controlling more, worrying more, sacrificing more. But love without freedom eventually becomes fear. And fear always asks the same question. What if I lose them? Real love asks a different question. How can I become the kind of person who loves without losing myself? Those two questions lead to completely different lives. The first creates anxiety. The second creates peace. The first chases. The second attracts. Because here's something extraordinary. People are naturally drawn toward those who already feel complete. Not perfect, complete. The person who enjoys their own company, who keeps promises to themselves, who has a purpose bigger than chasing approval, who doesn't need constant reassurance to believe they're worthy. That kind of confidence cannot be faked. It isn't built by motivational speeches. It isn't built by pretending not to care. It's built in silence, one decision at a time. Every morning, you choose discipline over distraction. Every evening, you choose growth over resentment. Every moment, you choose self-respect over desperation. Those small choices become your identity. And one day, without even realizing when it happened, you stop asking, "Why don't they choose me?" Because you become too busy choosing yourself. And strangely enough, that's often the exact moment life begins sending the right people into your path. Not because you chased them, but because you're finally walking in the direction of your own purpose. And that changes everything. Because the greatest magnet in the world isn't beauty. It isn't money. It isn't status. It's quiet certainty. The kind that comes from knowing that whether someone stays or leaves, you'll still wake up tomorrow with your values intact, your purpose alive, and your peace untouched. Yet, even after understanding all of this, there is one habit that quietly destroys more lives than rejection ever could. A habit so common that almost everyone mistakes it for kindness, when in reality, it's the fastest way to lose yourself without anyone ever noticing. And once you recognize it, you'll never see your own behavior the same way again. The habit doesn't begin with weakness. It begins with good intentions. You tell yourself you're being patient, understanding, supportive, loyal. You convince yourself that love means giving people endless chances, that real friends never walk away, that if you can just endure a little more pain, things will eventually return to the way they used to be. But life has a way of exposing the difference between hope and denial. Hope believes people can grow. Denial refuses to accept that some people never will. There's a quiet danger in confusing the two. Because every time you excuse behavior that repeatedly destroys your peace, you're teaching your own mind a devastating lesson. You're telling yourself that your boundaries are negotiable, that your time is disposable, that your emotional well-being is worth sacrificing just to avoid disappointing someone else. At first, the cost seems small. One more apology, one more cancel plan, one more night spent wondering what you did wrong. But emotional debt compounds just like financial debt. A single compromise becomes a habit. A habit becomes your identity. And before long, you can't remember the last time you made a decision based on what you truly wanted. You become an expert at reading everyone else's emotions while becoming a stranger to your own. Many people spend years mastering other people's moods. They know exactly when someone is upset, exactly when someone needs reassurance, exactly how to keep everyone comfortable. Yet if you ask them one simple question, "What do you need?" they wouldn't know how to answer, because somewhere along the way, they stopped asking themselves. There's an ancient story about a traveler crossing a frozen lake. Every step felt dangerous. The ice cracked beneath his feet, but he kept moving because the village on the other side promised safety. Halfway across, he noticed another traveler walking in the opposite direction. Unlike him, this man wasn't rushing. He wasn't looking down every second. He walked with calm confidence. When they finally met in the middle, the frightened traveler asked, "Aren't you afraid the ice will break?" The older man smiled. "I've learned the difference between respecting danger and living in fear of it." That sentence contains more wisdom than most people realize. Respecting people's feelings is healthy. Living in constant fear of losing them is not. One builds connection, the other destroys freedom. The Stoics believed that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was choosing the right action despite fear. Sometimes the courageous action is speaking the truth. Sometimes it's walking away. Sometimes it's saying nothing at all, because silence can be an extraordinary teacher. Most people fear silence because silence leaves them alone with their thoughts, without notifications, without distractions, without someone else telling them who they are. But that silence is exactly where transformation begins. Imagine walking into a room where every mirror has been covered. For the first time in years, you can't see your reflection. At first, it feels uncomfortable. Then something unexpected happens. You stop worrying about how you appear. You begin paying attention to how you feel. That's what solitude does. It removes the audience. And when the audience disappears, performance becomes unnecessary. You no longer have to prove anything. You no longer have to compete for attention. You no longer have to explain your worth. For many people, that sounds terrifying. For the Stoics, it sounded like freedom. Seneca once warned that the greatest slavery is becoming a slave to public opinion. Think about how much of modern life is built around being seen. We post moments before we've even lived them. We measure our value through numbers on a screen. We compare our ordinary mornings to someone else's carefully edited highlights. Then we wonder why peace feels impossible to find. Comparison quietly steals contentment. Approval quietly replaces purpose. And without noticing, we begin living for applause instead of authenticity. But applause is temporary. Character isn't. There's a reason mountains have inspired people for thousands of years. They don't move because someone criticizes them. They don't grow taller because someone praises them. They simply remain what they are. Stable, grounded, unshaken. Imagine carrying that same stability inside yourself. Imagine reaching a point where someone's compliment doesn't inflate your ego, and someone's criticism doesn't destroy your confidence. Not because you stopped caring, because you finally learned whose opinion matters most. Your own. This doesn't mean becoming arrogant. True confidence is surprisingly quiet. It doesn't interrupt. It doesn't compete. It doesn't need to announce itself. It listens more than it speaks. It observes more than it reacts. It chooses peace over proving a point. Have you ever noticed that the strongest people in a room are rarely the loudest? They don't dominate every conversation. They don't rush to correct everyone. They don't desperately seek recognition. Their presence speaks before their words ever do. That kind of presence cannot be bought. It cannot be borrowed. It cannot be faked. It is earned through thousands of invisible decisions. The decision to remain calm when anger would be easier. The decision to tell the truth when lying would be more convenient. The decision to respect yourself even when nobody else seems to. These moments never make headlines. Nobody applauds them, but they slowly shape the person you become. Every choice is a vote for your future identity. Every boundary you protect reminds your mind that your peace matters. Every time you stop chasing someone who has already chosen another direction, you create space for something far more valuable, your own growth. And here's the irony. The life you've been trying to build has been waiting patiently all along. Not on the other side of someone else's approval, but on the other side of your own courage. Because the day you stop asking, "How do I make them stay?" is often the very day you begin building a life that no longer depends on who leaves. And once that happens, you'll discover the final lesson. The lesson that separates people who spend their lives searching for happiness from those who quietly become it. Imagine yourself 20 years from now. Your hair has begun to turn gray. The urgency that once ruled your life has become quiet. You're sitting on a porch as the sun disappears beyond the horizon. For a moment, you begin thinking about your younger self. The person who couldn't sleep because someone didn't text back. The person who questioned their worth every time they weren't chosen. The person who believed losing someone meant losing everything. And suddenly, you smile, not because those moments didn't hurt, but because you finally understand something your younger self couldn't. The people who walked away were never taking your future with them. They were simply making room for it. Life has an unusual way of disguising blessings as endings. A closed door feels like rejection, until years later, you realize it protected you from walking into the wrong room. A broken relationship feels like failure, until you meet someone who teaches you what healthy love actually looks like. Losing a friendship feels unbearable, until the silence gives you enough space to rediscover who you were before you spent years trying to become who everyone else wanted you to be. Growth rarely arrives with celebration. More often, it arrives disguised as disappointment. There's an old legend about an eagle. When it reaches a certain age, its feathers become heavy. Its beak loses its sharpness, its talons weaken. The bird reaches a point where it has two choices: continue living comfortably while slowly becoming weaker, or retreat into isolation and endure the painful process of renewal. During that time, the eagle breaks away what no longer serves it. Old feathers fall. A stronger beak emerges. New talons grow. The process is painful, lonely, uncomfortable. May become the first moment you truly hear your own voice. Everything changes when you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" One question creates victims. The other creates wisdom. There will always be people who misunderstand you, people who underestimate you, people who leave before seeing who you were capable of becoming. Let them, not because they don't matter, but because your purpose cannot depend on someone else's permission. The strongest oak tree in the forest doesn't ask the wind to stop blowing. It grows stronger because the wind refuses to stop. Your challenges are doing the same thing. Every disappointment is quietly strengthening your patience. Every betrayal is sharpening your judgment. Every ending is teaching you how to begin again. One day, someone will meet the version of you that was built from every difficult decision you've made. They won't see the sleepless nights. They won't see the tears. They won't see the moments you almost gave up. They'll simply say, "You're so calm. You seem so confident. You make life look easy." They'll never realize that your peace wasn't given to you. It was earned. It was earned every time you refused to chase someone who had already chosen another direction. It was earned every time you protected your dignity instead of your pride. It was earned every time you chose discipline over desperation. And perhaps that's the greatest misunderstanding about confidence. People think confidence comes first. It doesn't. Action comes first. Keeping promises to yourself comes first. Choosing honesty over comfort comes first. Walking away from disrespect comes first. Confidence is simply the reward for becoming someone you can trust. So if you're still chasing someone, pause for a moment. Ask yourself one question. If they suddenly gave you all the attention you've been asking for, would it truly heal the emptiness you're feeling? Or have you been asking another person to solve a problem that only you can solve? Because no amount of love can replace self-respect. No amount of attention can replace purpose. No relationship can permanently silence a mind that has never learned to be at peace with itself. The freedom you've been searching for has never lived inside another person. It has always lived inside your own decisions, inside the boundaries you choose to protect, inside the habits you build every day, inside the courage to let go of what no longer belongs in your life. One day, you'll stop counting the people who left. You'll start appreciating the strength they unknowingly helped you discover. You'll stop chasing approval. You'll start chasing excellence. You'll stop asking the world to choose you, because you've finally chosen yourself. And once that happens, something remarkable begins to unfold. You walk differently. You speak differently. You think differently. Not because you're trying to impress anyone, because you're no longer carrying the unbearable weight of needing everyone to understand you. That is freedom. That is peace. That is the heart of Stoicism. Not becoming emotionless, becoming unshakable. So today, make one promise to yourself. Stop running after people who keep running away. Stop shrinking yourself to fit inside places you've already outgrown. Stop measuring your value by someone else's ability to recognize it. Instead, build a life so meaningful, a character so strong, and a mind so peaceful that whether people come or go, you remain whole, because the person you've been searching for, the person you hope someone else would help you become, has been waiting inside you all along. Protect that person. Invest in that person. Become that person. And one day, you'll realize the greatest victory was never getting someone to stay. It was finally learning that you never had to chase anyone to be worthy of love, respect, or peace. If this message stayed with you, don't let it end here. Take one lesson from today and apply it before this day is over. And in the comments, answer one question honestly. What is one thing you're ready to stop chasing, so you can finally start becoming the person you're meant to be? Until next time, protect your peace, master your mind, and remember, the strongest people in the world aren't the ones who hold on to everything. They're the ones who know exactly what to let go of.